Hey, thanks for the kind words from those who enjoyed that long video I made, because I usually watch them back before I put them out, but that was just too long to watch back. It was a too long don't watch, but I looked at the time on it and it was like, I quite enjoyed making that. And I thought it was pretty good in places, so I just decided to just let it go. But it's like, I don't do the talking, right? It's a funny old thing. So it's like, I find out what I said in my video. I know it is. I always agree with the guy, you know what I mean? He's always bang on. So I have to watch him back and find out what happened. Because I kind of get going, and that's the way it goes sometimes. I think I'm better off. I've always done better in the past, you know, if I've ever had a time when things are not that great. I just start putting my videos out without watching them sometimes and just let them be an act of faith. Because believe it or not, you know, I make a video every day. It's my form of prayer. So I make maybe a 2-hour video every day. I just don't put them out. And I don't think there'd be any, personally don't think there'd be any audience for them. And I don't gain from spending my time doing it so much, but I do it for myself to get my thoughts straight, because speaking your thoughts is thinking. If you get it out there, you hear yourself say it, it's like the formulations come together. You make connections while you're doing it. So I mean, I encourage people to do this. It's like if you have issues where you're kind of at odds with yourself, get yourself a webcam, start recording yourself, be as honest as you can be. Have no boundaries, no shielding, no people that you're trying to impress, no things that you wouldn't have people know. Turn on a webcam and be as honest as you can with yourself, and when you find yourself fucking lying and you make you cringe, you're onto something. It's what I've been teaching people for the last 10 years. Get yourself a webcam and try to be honest. Try to be honest about how you feel and what you think. Hear yourself say it and know you're a fool. I'm not saying put your video on YouTube. Fuck no. I'm saying watch it yourself and listen to yourself. See if you can be literally honest with yourself. It's an incredible place to start. Once you start scratching away at that, you could end up any place. But there's something to address here, right? You see, I'm a guy who likes, you know, military things. I've been lucky enough to live in a time that's been blighted by low volume foreign war. And the nation I live in is usually got blood in its hands and is the guilty party, but now they're having us believe that we're like angels. Not fuck-ups. Geopolitical inquiry into the Iraq War. Findings were 2016, but they were put out on a very, quiet news day. Or there was something else going on at the same time, so they just faded off into history. There's a public inquiry that's a damning report that comes down on Tony Blair as being a war criminal. How about that? But nobody ever did anything about it. We lied to the world in order to justify bombing the crap out of Iraq. Now, if you look at what the Russians have done in Ukraine, right? Well, they've shown a lot more restraint than we ever showed the Iraqi people when we bombed them. We knocked the fuck out of them in order to try and knock them into a state of shock and make them more pliable with a tactic that they call shock and awe. If you can stun a population with your brutality, you can make them pliable. But it wears off. And it doesn't work on some people. People who are in their way psychopathic because they've had a lot of bad things happen to them. Bombing them is just another day. So they actually thrive in the chaos because they're not so easy to shock. Because they live their entire lives in a state of shock. Or close to it. So all you do is you brutalise all the good people and empower all the savages with your bombing campaign. You see, it's okay when we bomb other countries. They're bombs of peace, aren't they? But when other people do it, the governments get damn angry. It's like, only we're allowed to invade foreign countries. Only NATO are allowed to attack sovereign nations. We do it all the time. When somebody else does it and has been properly provoked and has got real reasons for having done it, apparently they're evil, bad people. When without real provocation, the West has attacked, well, NATO in my lifetime have attacked, they had a reason to go to Panama, I'll give them that. I'll give Reagan his Panama. But Kosovo, there was no need for NATO direct action in that. That was like a demonstration of muscle and force, having picked a side in something that was... I was checking out something about that conflict. I was watching an interview with Zvonimir Boban. Those of you who are real football geniuses will remember that name. He was a shit hot central midfielder. He used to play for AC Milan. Listening to him talking about the breakup of Yugoslavia and how it broke up into really football clubs at the end of the day. But they had a situation as to where there was flare-ups of tribal violence between football supporters, believe it or not. Kicked off that war, turned it into something big. Got it a Boban. I mean, think about that. A couple of thousand people aside, fight breaks out in a football stadium and then carries on outside and then kind of swallows up the nation from what he was saying. So that's how it hit him. He was playing in a football match where the fans openly started fighting against each other and the police, and it turned into absolute chaos. NATO felt the need to bomb Kosovo. And they knocked the shit out of the place. They destroyed everything that would allow something to move. They went for bridges, infrastructure, good targets. Smashed the place to fucking bits, having decided who was the good guys. Found out about one side's atrocity and ignored the other side's atrocity and came down on what ostensibly was the wrong side, if you ask me. Got involved in a civil war by deciding who the good guys were. It turns out they weren't really. There were people who found themselves in a difficult position and had lost control of it. So it's like when the government loses control of the country, but then the government is still being punished and held accountable by the world community. It's like diplomacy and even military action at that stage makes no sense. Certainly airstrikes, that makes even less sense. But that was the NATO path, and we like to tell ourselves that we fought a just and noble war. Yes, there was actually a need, I think, to push Iraq out of Kuwait, although the pretext for that was a pack of lies as well. They lied about that to get in. But probably the right thing to do. I mean, they did invade their neighbouring country, but their neighbouring country had been stealing their oil by drilling underneath their territory. So it's like Saddam Hussein's losing X number of millions a day. But saying that at the same time, the Iran-Iraq war, which ended in stalemate, left Iraq with, I think, the second largest military in the world. They had really ramped up their purchasing power and bought themselves a lot of former Soviet Union equipment. They had the largest army, second largest army in the world at the time, Saddam Hussein had at the end of the Iraq war. He got to the end of the Iraq war stronger than when he went into it, because there were plenty of people willing to give him equipment, weapons. Who was giving equipment and weapons to Saddam Hussein? Well, the US. And also the Russians. How about that, eh? When he was fighting Iran, everybody backed him. And then, funny how it works out. We decide who the good guys are. Our terrible politicians. They decide who the good guys are, and they don't know them. They just like the idea of them, and then they give them weapons. Poor judges of character giving out weapons, thinking that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but that's not wise. The enemy of your enemy is likely another enemy of yours. When the day's done, he's going to turn on you. It's like that Azov battalion, right? They've been fighting a war since 2014 of genocide and the brutalization of civilians in the east part of the Ukraine. They've been at it. They've been actually fighting a war of psychological and military. Basically, they blow a place to crap, kill people. People find out about it, they deny it, and the international community supports them in their denials. But the Russians are listening, and the Russians go in and they find out what's going on. And this has been happening since 2014. And it's like, oh, so you in the West, right? There's people in Kiev now who control the country, who are actually at odds with your interest, and they're actually traditionally your enemies, but you've decided to back them. And this is a surprise to the Russians. In view of the fact that, NATO are the kings of unjust war and unjust invasion, where they started the war on terror and they give themselves license to just strike in any country that they thought there was terrorism. And now suddenly there's a real situation broken out in the Ukraine that's been the same way as for nearly a decade, and they've never intervened because they're all making good money out of it. So they're deciding that that's the just war of extermination that's going on in the Ukraine because our friends are there. And hey, we make lots of money out of that place. They've put our children on the boards of directors of their oil companies and are paying them like stipends of like 100k a week. Getting paid like footballers for not turning up for board meetings like Hunter Biden. It's like, who did you guys pay off? It seems like you paid off the right guys. Just saying. This is a dirty business. And morally, I'm sorry, but Russia are on the right side of it, even though they've gone to war. They've got the moral imperative. The moral imperative, it means that the Russians won't give up. It's like, why give up? You've got the moral imperative. Putin's support amongst his own people, because Putin's a fucking warlord, who can't necessarily be removed from power with some kind of vote of no confidence or election. The only way of getting rid of him is to kill him. And it's like, they like him. Why? Because he's strong. Him being strong makes them strong. He's a strong man. He's a warlord. Now, the warlord always wins against someone like Boris Johnson or Joe Biden, because if your war goes on for longer than a few weeks, the people who once supported it all of a sudden become horrified with it, and they want it to stop. So when you start a war, you're on a timer. Now, Putin, right, this is the thing about it. How long has that war been going on? 19 days? Right, there's a situation now, and this is how it stands, and I'll straight up tell you. That force that was heading down that road took them a lot longer to get there than they thought it was going to, but now they've arrived. It's now a matter of, okay, now we've got our guns in position, and we've brought our artillery forward. You should surrender now. You should have surrendered 20 days ago. You now take us seriously when we say we're going to rain down fire on you. Now surrender. And now what they're doing over in the Ukraine now is they're preparing to surrender without saying they've surrendered. See this one coming a mile off. They'll surrender without saying they've surrendered. The media will lie to us about the terms at which the war will end. Because the war will end. It will end shortly, because all that has to happen is for Putin to say, no more games, you surrender or we shell you. And when they say they've been shelled, right, they're shelling us. They're not. They're just knocking on your door. If they'd have shelled you the way that the Russian army operate, your cities would be flattened. They've done it before. They have a way of doing it. They have a way of dealing with partisans as well. They're miles better against guerrilla fighters than we are. Why? Because they exterminate them. It's hard to hide from a barrage of artillery where they think they know you are. When they think they know where you are, they'll hit you fucking hard. If it wasn't for all the stingers, idiots fighting in little pockets would be getting rinsed by attack helicopters as we speak. But attack helicopters are kind of off the menu, aren't they? Because they've got stingers, so it's a matter of, fine, we'll just use our guns, you use our long range weapons. And now you get the war you asked for. You get a range war. It's like, our guns can blow the crap out of you from 20 miles away. What have you got? Oh, nothing. Okay. It's like you're just setting up your own civilian population to get massacred, and also you've imported every fucking idiot in Europe, east and west, to all turn up to ostensibly fight for you, and then they turn up and they're less than fucking useless because they're soldiers in their head, and it turns out that they're just another mouth to feed, which you can't afford. You need to surrender, Ukraine. You needed to surrender straight away. If you'd have surrendered straight away to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, right, the world would have taken it super seriously, and Russia would be held to the terms of surrender, which were reasonable, right? Russia would be held to them by the rest of the world on pain of real war. Because something that the West needs is time. To have any chance of even doing anything to Russia that matters. You can sanction them, but I think they already had that in mind. You see, Russia only needs one customer in the world, and that's China. And we won't fuck with China because China owns this country. They've already fucking bought and paid for everything. They've paid for your LGBT, they've paid for your climate change movement. That's why nobody criticises them for the coal and their emissions, because they pay. I've never ever heard anyone who's a professional activist ever say anything bad about the Chinese. Ever. Because the Chinese have created and fueled and paid for this crazy climate cult. They're your backers. And why the fuck wouldn't they be? What a weakness has been like almost bred into our political class as to where the zealot-like religion of doom, climate change, can be readily exploited by somebody who might want to go to war with you for energy. It's like you guys have set up a perfect strangle with your green share. You've manoeuvred us into a perfect stranglehold that allows the Russians to put us all in the fucking poorhouse. And then if they decide to attack us, we can't do anything but nuke them. That's what you've done, you Greens, with your policies. So it's like, CND, as once was completely paid for by the Soviets, the Russians. Completely paid for. What was that? The campaign for nuclear disarmament. That was the rich and the children of the rich and the well-to-do and the people who went to all the right schools demanding that our government lay down our arms and surrender to the Soviet Union and have Potemkin Village perfect socialism. That's what they were about. Dreaming of a better communist future for our people, and what's standing in our way is the fact that we've got weapons that are a deterrent. If we get rid of our nuclear weapons unilaterally, it then means the Soviets can threaten us with nuclear weapons, and that creates a situation as to where the people in the UK, the socialists, can seize power and be backed and protected by the nuclear-armed Soviet Union. And that's what CND was. It's like Mark, the priest I got to know. Now he's left Extinction Rebellion, or he's still part of them, but he's joined something now called Just Stop Oil, which is pro-war. Pro-war. But like, we're addicted to, they say things like, we're addicted to fossil fuels as if it's like being addicted to smoking. And that all we have to do is somehow stop. And they don't understand the relationship between oil and electricity production. And they don't understand just how precious to us our electricity production is. And they don't care. Because they think they'll be okay because they've got money. So I'll be able to afford it. A lot of these celebrities with the Hollywood lot, the George Takei saying, oh well, it's your patriotic duty to pay a lot more for your fuel. I don't mind paying it, but he's worth about 70 million or something. He signed so many fucking autographs over the years at conventions that he's just made of money. So he's willing to take a dump. Most of the Hollywood lot, they're willing to pay more for fuel because they're millionaires. It's like, like some guy in a TV show, 1 year of his salary would make anyone normal settle for life. More than. You start hearing about people in TV shows getting paid $1 million an episode, and dicks out of Games of Thrones. At the end, they were on $1 million an episode, and they had a main cast of about 15 or 20 people, and they were getting $1 million an episode. Oh, those people can afford to pay a little bit more for everything. They're the kind of people who go around saying, I think we should really, it would be all right if we just paid a little bit more for everything to save the planet. And it's like, it's all right for you to say. But those of us who haven't got a voice, or have got a voice that's limited to this, are saying, hang on a minute, right? Smoking is my only vice, right? I have switched on, feeding off my electricity, a laptop, a new computer that doesn't use very much power, a monitor, a fridge, and 2 lamps. That's all the electrical devices I have plugged in. And I've got like a brand new electric cooker and a brand new fridge, so they don't use a lot of power. And it's like, I can't afford my gas and electric prices to be doubled as they are expected to be as from next month. I can't afford that. I'm going to have to give up smoking to be able to afford food and electricity. I manage on about 55 quid a week. And there's no one in the world wants to give me a job. Why? Well, I'm a massive threat. Why? Well, I'm a lot smarter than everyone I'm likely to ever go and work for. And people don't like it. I get the old, you make me feel stupid, which is somehow my fault that they don't know shit. And being a smart guy, and I am fucking smart, and I can handle myself as well, and I can talk, and I don't take shit, and I'll argue, and I'll make the case, and I'll win. And you win yourself out of a job. Last interview I went for, just on a side topic, I'm going to get back to the main one in a minute. Went for an interview, right? And all it was a morning job. Picking up and dropping off cars for a hire firm. I'm like, I spent 25 hours a week. Start at 8, finish usually for about 1 o'clock. I'll do for me, I'll apply for that. And all it was moving cars around, turning up on time, moving cars around, and bringing them back. Child's play. And not only that, it's in my area as well, because I know round here like the back of my hand. It used to be my old pick-up stomping ground. So I know the place. You can send me to a village somewhere. I'm like, yeah, I know where it is. There's no time wasted. No need for sat-navs and things like that. So it's like, oh, this is perfect for me. I'll go and do that. Right? And I went to the interview, and I put my suit on and a tie, and I went to the interview, and the guy who interviewed me was about as fruity a gay boy as I've ever come across. Like, hiya, one of these effeminate with submissive with hands. And he's like, I get my electric car next week. I'm so excited. And it's like, oh, right, so this is a modern company that's got a gay manager. Just what we need. And I says to him, you know what I said, don't you? So you shouldn't have an electric car this part of the world. Too many hills. Excuse me. He was thinking that it'd do 150 mile to battery. Because that's what it says. And I'm like, nah, you get nothing like that out of it round here, mate. Where do you live? Top end of Bury. I'm like, all right, so you live at a higher elevation in this place. It's like, weigh up your daily journey in elevation. Use the Google thing to work out how high you're going to have to plough that ton of steel with all those batteries. All that weight, that ton and a half of weight. Just weigh up how far up a hill, how high in elevation you've got to drag it. And then you can do a quick in your head mathematics. You know how many miles it is. Well, you can work out just exactly how much fuel you're going to get out of your battery, and it won't be 150 mile, it'll be about 45, 50. And his face just dropped, and he's like, immediately he's like, oh, you one of them, are you? You could tell. I'm like, if they were selling them in Lincolnshire or in the West Country, you'd get 150 miles to charge. You might even get more. In this part of the world, it's the wrong car. They shouldn't even be selling them around here. And then he made an objection that his objection he made was that rules like, like thermodynamics, just basic things like it's a lot harder walking up a hill than it is to walk. And it's like going up that great big hill with that wagon that's full of stone. It's going to be really pulling because it's the same use of energy as if you were trying to drag it up the hill with horses. He threw it back at me as to deny science in favour of his religion. And it's a matter of, guy turned cold on me for just being honest with him. After he was bragging that he was getting a new electric car. I've ordered it, it's coming next week, I can't wait. And it was like a Nissan Leaf, an underpowered electric car, which are actually notorious. I know a couple of people around here who've got them and they don't do better than 42 or 45 miles to the charge. But it costs them the same amount of money to charge it up as someone who runs it on the flat. And they swear at it. They swear at their car. You fucking unreliable piece of fucking shit, is what they say to it. When they get in it and say it's got 150 miles range and you just drive out of your street and it's gone down to 140 and you're like, here we go. So it's like, that's the last interview I had. And it's like, what did you bring to the party? Geography, science. It's like, how do you know all this about driving stuff around? It's like, well, I've been everywhere. It used to be my job to estimate how much fuel it might take me to get from one place to another without filling the fucking thing up and wasting money. Working for a firm that doesn't charge on fuel. So it's like, if I use too much fuel, if they think I've used too much fuel, they'll take it out of my pocket. Certain firms I've worked for. So I know. And it's like, for that guy to come across someone who knows something, he was like, no way. Didn't even get a phone call or a email or a letter saying, I'm sorry you weren't successful. As soon as I led on to that guy that I knew something he didn't, it was finished. And I knew I was finished. I'm like, you're not giving me a job. Even though right up to this moment, you've made it appear that I'm like the perfect candidate because I fucking was. 25 hours a week, minimum wage. I'm like, that'll do for me. That's enough for me to live on. I don't live on anything. But no, because I know something. you're not getting that fucking job. So you look at a guy like me who's excluded because I've got an IQ of 128 and I do a lot of reading and I've got a lot of interest and I know a lot of things from both, like, my work experience, which is like varied and vast, and a story of like skullduggery and betrayal, and also what I've spent years doing, having hobbies and interests and being someone who's interested in things. It stands against me. So it's like, I'm that guy. That guy ain't thanking anyone for the price of fuel going up. Why? Don't even have a car. Why am I furious about fuel going up? Because of what I'd say is illegal sanctions against Russia. Illegal. They haven't attacked us. Illegal sanctions against Russia. You think the people who do business with the Russians are to blame for what's gone on in Ukraine? No. Are they folk? But they've all been punished. And they're not Russians, they're British. Our people. Our people are the ones who have been punished for it because they do business with the Russians. And they're buying commodities from them, like grain, minerals. It's like our politicians didn't even look at the list of things that we buy from Russia before they sanctioned them. It's like, where does nickel come from? Russia. They cornered the market for it, so there's no nickel anymore. We've got no nickel, yeah? Go and look at all the things that nickel's used in. We haven't got a source of it anymore because it comes from Russia. Or the sources of it are now in deep constraint as to where the price of that stuff has gone, using 1,000 different alloys, products, and we've no longer got access to it. Well done. They didn't even look at the list before they started to sanction. They didn't even for a minute think of what the repercussions might be. They just think of a high oil price and they say, well, that'll be all right. The people don't mind paying a bit more. And it's a matter of, well, when everything on the road, when our entire economy is based upon lorries, cars, motorways, they didn't even think that the price of everything will go up because the cost of fuel's gone up. And at the same time, we get a lot of, because it's the world's commodities markets, the price of grain's gone up 20 points. That was only last week. It'll probably get worse. That means the price of bread goes up. The price of grain goes up. That's the price of flour. It's like, tell me something that doesn't have flour in it. There's not so many things that don't rely on that basic ingredient. So it's like our basic ingredients are becoming more expensive. So everything's going to become more expensive. Everything. At the same time, taxes are going up next month. National insurance is being increased. We've got the stupid CAS Air Zone thing that's going to charge anyone in business money every day for driving their own vehicle, which they say they're not going to do it now, but they're not promising. Because they don't want to lose the local election. Once the local election's in the bag, they'll just do it. Because we're dealing with the fucking Labour Party and they've already spent hundreds of millions on this without asking us. So you think that pressure, on top of all the other things, it's like they've set us up for an absolute fall. They've screwed us. They used that war in the Ukraine as an excuse to screw us. And now they're talking tough. Saw something the other day. Mark Felton Productions. Watch a lot of his stuff. I like his audio book channel as well. War Stories. Learned a lot about all kinds of aspects of the Second World War and later from that guy. He's a very good historian. And he made a video. Can Russia threaten us? Don't look for it. Can Russia threaten us? This guy's a military historian. He knows his shit. And because the British Army are, we fund them, there's plenty of information available about the equipment that we've got available. And how about this, right? Russia launched a drone and sent it into NATO airspace. And it was able to fly for a day without being detected. A day. Why is that? We haven't got any air defence. What? Yeah, Eastern Europe has got no air defence. Really? Yeah, no air defence, none. No working radar. The only radar that are around are radars for air traffic control, and most of that's done with transponders, so it's done with radio as opposed to radar. It's done with radio signals. It's different now. They don't need it anymore. So they haven't got any air defence. Mark Felton, he was looking at it and it's like, right, this is Britain's defence situation if the Russians decide to try and launch missiles at us. Now, it's not about getting nuked. It's about getting hit with conventional weapons. Conventional, not nuclear. You could take, to my mind, right, and I've driven around this fucking country, I'll tell you, right? There's 3 motorway bridges, and if you take them down, this country's fucked. And there's no way of getting around it. Thalwell Viaduct, Humber Bridge. Take them out. Hit the infrastructure. About doing some untold damage to the docks in Hull and taking out a couple of motorway bridges. There could be a minimal loss of life, but our country be absolutely crippled with just a few conventional missiles that we've got no ability to detect. Excuse me? Yes, no ability to detect. We've got 4 radar stations operated by the RAF. And they're in the same places they've always been. And they can be targeted because they've got no air defence, but they've got radar. So it's like their primary targets for an attack. It's like all you need to do is send missiles, more missiles than you need, knowing that most of them are going to get through. We've got a ridiculously small number of anti-air installations, like a ridiculously small number of them. Like there's something like 16 of them and they go on the back of a truck, and that's all we've got. We've got 2 RAF Eurofighter Tornadoes, which are beautiful planes, but we've got 2 of them ready to take off at any given time. We've got 2 of them on standby, and a missile attack from Russia, a conventional missile attack, they'd probably fire 60 missiles at you. What ability have those Eurofighter Typhoons got to bring down cruise missiles? Like all the ability in the world, but there's never one been made that carry enough munitions to hold them off. We haven't got an air force to defend us, and those kind of things that hug the land and fly at low speed until they get towards the target, and then they can increase speed to like Mach 3. We can't stop them. Britain is as vulnerable to attack as it's ever been in its history, right? And our armed forces have become a woke finishing school, like a political education camp. And we've got no capacity to fight. The Royal Navy is no longer has a base on Scapa Flow. The Royal Navy is deployed, and the core of its strength, we've got 1 carrier group, haven't we, that's unequipped and it's got no reserves. And they're scattered all over the place. We've got 1 carrier group. When they mobilise the Navy, that's what we've got. 1 carrier group. Something like 15 F-35s, that's it. Them are the only sea-borne planes, sea-launch planes we've got. We've already moved the bulk of our Air Force to Eastern Europe, surrounding Ukraine. This country's undefended. We don't even have an early warning system. We don't have an AWACS anymore. decommissioned our last AWACS and we don't have a replacement. So we've abandoned military spending. We've abandoned our military. All we've actually got are our, what they call Vanguard class, the V subs. Our Trident nuclear missile submarines are the only serviceable weapon that we can really project any force with. Because, hey, we've had government after government who've cut military spending, saying, well, we don't need a military as long as we've got a nuclear deterrent. And that'd be absurd, but that's the policy, you see. We've got a nuclear deterrent. We can strike back, and that's it. We've just got a plan to avenge ourselves on anyone who might attack us with nuclear arms. And that's it. That's all we've got. And if we want to play that game with Russia, Russia will annihilate this country and doesn't even have to use nuclear to do it. They could target our infrastructure with their missiles, and we can't stop them. So why are we mouthing off, talking hard to the Russians, and why aren't we taking them seriously in view of the fact that we are no longer a military power? We cannot project force against a foe like them, ever, because we've given it up. We've given it up decades ago. We don't make our own equipment anymore. We buy it all from the Americans. And if we lose, this thing, if we lose that, the planes on one of our 2 aircraft carriers, because hey, we used to have aircraft carriers, but we decommissioned them all. We had 2 aircraft carriers even back as far as the Falklands. We just didn't have the right planes for them because we had carriers, but we didn't want to research to create a seaplane. So we made do with Harriers, subsonic fighters, but we had state-of-the-art missiles, so it's okay. We had sidewinders. Our old planes were armed with new weapons, which is how you go about it. But it's like, now, we haven't even got them. We've got about 15 of them F-35 fighters, and when they've gone, we might have to wait fucking 10 years for more. So it's like they weren't purchased for war. They were purchased so we could be seen to have a military strike capability, which we haven't got. It's like they're living in a fucking dream world. They're mouthing off as to where they've got people saying, we should do something. It's like, with what? Our armed forces have been stripped down to fuck all. We've got nothing. Nothing that could give the Russians even pause. And if they decide to turn their sights on us, just from my local knowledge, I could give them 6 targets to hit. And if one conventional high explosive missile hit any of them, we'd have a headache that we couldn't solve. Take out the Fellwall Viaduct. Boom. Now what? Now what? Oh, okay, right, okay, that's separated the west side of the country from the south. The northwest separated from the south, and good luck ever repairing that fucking bridge after we've smashed it. We've got a weapon for that. It's like, you mouth off tough to the Russians. Talk about aggressive. And you're not taking them seriously as to, well, the way that our governments have handled COVID, an absolute clusterfuck of panic and authoritarian sneer. Like, oh, here's a chance for us to get what we want. Let's cripple the country with debt and create the illusion that there's only one way out of it, and it's to go all green and vegan because that's what some people want. I don't want that. And outside of the privileged classes of people in the world, no one else does as well. People at the BBC might want that because, say, the BBC for years have been making things about we need to be self-sustaining. It's like they've got the same sort of mindset as fucking Hitler had. at the BBC with their programming. All these middle-class people talking about being self-sufficient and reliant. And they're not self-sufficient, reliant, and self-reliant people. They expect everyone else to be because they think it's a good idea. And it's like, that's who's in control. Can you imagine what the media might be like? Right? If the Russians were to blast the Humber Bridge, right, which is easily within striking distance, because what they do is they have planes designed, that long-range heavy bombers designed to be able to hit you from 1,500 miles away with cruise missiles. 1,500 miles away. So it's like, by the time you've spotted them, they've gone. You ain't catching them. Every now and then they have a push or air defence. They probe it. They've been probing it for years to see how long it takes for the typhoons to turn up so they can wave. They've been probing our airspace for radar for about a decade. And they know where all the weak spots are. Because there are weak spots. Why? Because we've got static, positioned radar where they don't have that. What? Yeah, the Russians, understanding that it's a weakness to have fixed radar in view of that Shrike technology that'll, when the missile gets scanned, it automatically targets what's scanning it. So if your radar's switched on, you're dead. So you have to switch off your radar. So it's like, right, okay, they've got radar deterrent technology, which means if you have your radar turned on, they can destroy it. So it's like you consider Shrike technology, and the Russians have considered Shrike technology, and their important radar piece of equipment are all mobile. They're on fucking wheels. So they don't have fixed positions for radar. They take theirs with them, knowing that their enemy had developed a weapon that could destroy them. Where did they learn this? Vietnam War. Why? Well, their radar installations were readily being destroyed by these Shrike missions. So they came up with a countermeasure. So, right, okay. From now on, our radar systems are integrated into our SAM sites, and anything that gets anything that gets close enough to hit us, if our interceptor missiles don't hit the miniguns on our Tunguskers, we'll take them out automatically. They've got mobile point defense systems that we haven't even thought about yet. They had the whole Vietnam War to practice anti-air. The Russians are 10 years ahead of us in rocketry. They can produce missiles at about a tenth of the price of ours because they've been specialising in it and concentrating on it, as to where the cruise missile is the primary weapon of the Russian military, and they've got fucking thousands of them. And when they make them, they cost about 30 grand each instead of 350 grand. Because they've got a war industry. They've still got one. We've abandoned ours, and they've continued. So we're behind on the technology. It's like we're not up to scratch. Our gear is not right. If you notice, them first few attacks on the ground, them tanks that were lost, like almost 50-year-old tanks. They weren't risking anything. They sent their crap to the front to get destroyed to see what the resistance would be like. They didn't use any of their more sophisticated hardware. Why would you? It's like they're not stupid. They've got tactics that work. It's like if you couldn't work out that that attack on Kiev was actually a feint, a bluff attack using long-range weapons to blindside their enemy while they swung round and took all the ports. It's like, if you don't realise that's what's gone on, you're a fucking idiot. But they've got generals on GB News who have got their fucking heads straight up their asses, Can't even work that the place has been surrounded. They can't even work out that they've surrounded it. And they're just lobbing stuff in. They can't even work that out. Because that means you've lost, you see. And it's like, it's not good news, is it? It's not great news to get some old general on GB News to say, oh yes, yeah, of course we've got a chance. It's like, no. Ukraine not getting their asses kicked is propaganda. It's the same as the propaganda. Remember when we used to get propaganda from when the Iraq war was on? When we used to get propaganda from their guys. Their guys would say, talking up all the time about all the wins they'd had and that they were actually winning the war and that they were... And that guy continued to broadcast until they knocked him off the air. It's like, if you ain't seen this, you know, this propaganda to the West to gain sympathy, right? You've not studied the Vietnam War. You don't know the tricks. You don't know any of the tricks. And it's like, those who don't know any of the tricks, they fall for what that Ukrainian guy's telling them up line and sinker, and it's a matter of, excuse me, he was an actor on television. And if rumours are true, he's an actor who's got like 5 million quid's worth of mansion in Florida and 1.1 billion in his bank account. So it appears he's already been paid for this acting job. Someone needs to check up on that information, but it keeps rolling around that guy has been, he's become, since he become president of the Ukraine, has become a billionaire overnight. So like they reckon Putin's worth a few billion, right? But hey, if he's been squirreling a bit away for the length of time he's been in power, you could expect that. But this guy only turned up 2 years ago. And he campaigned on a policy to make peace with Russia and then just fucking doubled down on what they were doing. So you want to know who the war criminal is? It's Zelensky. He's the war criminal, and the narrative from the Russians to say we're ending this farce and we're bringing down this US puppet regime and we're liberating the poorest country in Europe, Ukraine. Ukrainians are poorer than Russians by a fair old chalk. If you look at the way they lived in those two breakaway provinces, you ain't seen poverty like that outside at Third World. But there are plenty of people in Ukraine making billions out of energy and mining. Yet the people live in the shit. So it's like, oh well, it's capitalism. It's like, no, it's not. It's fucking cronyism and it's gangsterism. You're just telling the world what they want to hear so they'll support you. The best result of this war from day one was Ukraine needs to surrender. How many people have you heard to that? You've got our mainstream media and politicians saying, send them more weapons, let's fight to the last Ukrainian. And it'd be like, who talks like this? Have you ever heard this, anything like this before, come from politicians over a crisis like this? And the answer is no, this is new. We've never had it where all our politicians become mass hysterical over something that's not got much to do with them at all, other than they've played a part in it getting to the stage where it's at where direct action is necessary. It's like, who's got the moral imperative? Russia. Who's in the wrong? The Western powers providing weapons without actually providing men to shoot them. So are you willing to fight to the last drop of Ukrainian blood against your enemy in a situation that you're not listening to the Russians and taking them seriously for years and simply vilifying them and using them as puppets and tools to attack Trump, where you've created your own legend of Putin? Well, the legend of Putin you've created, you use it as a weapon against you, as I would. if you want to, anybody out there, if you ever want to come at me as to say, this guy's a bad guy, he's up to this, he's up to that. I'm like, well, if you think that, you should shut the fuck up, shouldn't you? Why? I might be a dangerous man who can do you fucking harm because you keep saying I am. So they've created the Putin golem to vilify Trump, and everyone's gone along with it in the media. And then all this bullshit you've had over the years, certainly in our press, as to where these nice Russians that we like, oligarchs, because they like some of them and some they don't like, poisoned in like Salisbury or something like that. And it's like, how come when Putin chooses to poison someone, he uses poisons that take years to kill them? Don't they have sodium cyanide in Russia? I mean, shit. I mean, if you want to kill somebody, sorry, but you know, if you want to kill somebody, right, what you want to do is get yourself a load of devices that got a very small amount of mercury in them. Go out, you might find light bulbs. Well, just trace amounts of mercury in them. Break them up and get all the mercury, put it in a syringe, and poison someone with that. And it will kill them. And if it doesn't kill them, it will leave them brain dead. As to where that's one of the worst things that can happen to you if someone was to inject you with mercury. Why don't the FSB do that? The old KGB? Why don't they use poisons that are actually effective? Why is it always these nuclear isotopes that they're poisoning people with when you can kill people with things you'll find in your kitchen? You can. You can poison people with things like fucking wood alcohol, and they'll just apply it to put it in the drink, kill them, go blind and die. There's fucking hundreds of ways of killing somebody without leaving, without it being such an easy chase to say. They don't know who did that with them polonium poisonings, but I find it absurd that they say, well, he's been poisoned with polonium. That's Putin's trademark. And it's like, if he really wanted these people dead, don't you think he'd probably use something a bit more deadly than what he uses? I mean, that's like to smuggle a nuclear isotope into a country. That's a little bit tricky, you know. It's like that stuff will fucking set off the radar. It will set off the fucking X-ray. What are we talking about here? Like something like a hypermagnetic. So it's putting out radiation. It's putting out radio signals. It's like, how do you smuggle that into a country? Well, I can think of plenty of ways to smuggle something so small as that into a country if you were well connected, but it's a matter of that. It's like, that doesn't seem like such a sensible way of doing it, does it? If you want the guy dead, just get some chemists to knock up something fucking deadly. Knock up something deadly yourself. You don't think trained spies couldn't just go into a well-stocked up kitchen or else a half well-stocked up medicine locker and be able to come up with some deadly concoction? I think it's quite straightforward. I mean, I'm not a killer, you know, but if I put my mind to it, I could probably come up with a way of killing somebody with poison without needing nuclear isotopes to do it. It makes no sense to me. It seems like a put-up job, and I would suggest that somebody wants somebody dead like that. It would probably be like a punishment beating as to where they die slowly and in a lot of pain. But it'd be a matter of, that's the sort of punishment that would be left behind for, you know, when you've pissed on someone's chips. You think Putin would be bothered about some dissident mouthing off? Why? It makes no sense. Because the guys who were mouthing off against him, they were pretty much just telling people what they wanted to hear anyway. They weren't dangerous people. So it's like we've been fed a sandwich of bullshit about the Russians for the last 6 or 7 years, and it's all been about attacking Trump, and it was all set in motion by Hillary Clinton, Obama, plus guys like Jake Sullivan, Victoria Nuland, the people who are now back in the White House as part of the Biden administration, they played a full part in the coup in 2014, which has led to this shit show. A full part. And when they did it, they didn't give a fuck about Europe, they didn't give a fuck about energy, and they didn't give a fuck about what the Russians might do, because they knew that they wouldn't pay any price for it, and the price would be paid directly by the Ukrainian people, who the new pliant leadership had decided to firmly throw under the fucking bus. Because, hey, every city's got its cosmopolitan elite. London's got it. London's cosmopolitan elite are lefties who support the fucking Labour Party. The billionaires and millionaires. They support the Labour Party. Woke pricks who don't know what the world is. Live life as if it's some kind of dream until reality smashes them in the face, and then they complain to the press as to say, I've been fucked with. Someone's fucked with my shit. And it's like, people have been fucking with my shit most days for most of my life. Get fucking used to it. But they can't, you see. They live in a bubble. They live in a bubble where they think better of everyone until people show their true colours. And then they act like it's a shock and a surprise and an outrage that someone turns out to be a cunt. And they always act like nobody could ever have known because they didn't. And it's like, you ask those people to fight a psychological war against the Soviet Union and Putin. It's like, he can play you like a fiddle forever, and so can Zelensky. They can both play you like fiddles forever because you're fucking stupid. But to tell you you're stupid means I don't get to work for you, doesn't it? Means I don't ever get a job for you. You're like that dumbass guy at that car firm who was all gay and excited because his electric car were turning up next week. A piece of crap that wouldn't have the torque to pull your fucking foreskin back. Fucking crappy 90 fucking horsepower electric vehicle. And that guy's asking for me to say, oh, looky you, well done. And I'm like, you've ripped yourself off there, mate. Why? Because of science. Excuse me. I might not be a scientist, but it's still science, isn't it? I might not be a fucking former military man, but it's like my estimation is to say, mainland UK is undefended from air attack, pretty much. Because if you look at something like look at something like that approach that the Palestinians have in attacking the Iron Dome, where the plan was to overwhelm the defences and make them run out of ammunition. They failed. They ran out of missiles before the Israelis ran out of countermeasures. And that was the end of the war. And, you know, hey, it's a weird one, isn't that? Nobody's addressed that war. Has Putin been over to talk to the Israelis and the Palestinians and try and broker some kind of lasting peace? No, he's had nothing to do with the Israelis at all. Because you know something that's true. I'll tell you something that's true. Democrats don't care a shit about Israel. Only US presidents in my lifetime who've given a fuck about Israel have been Reagan and Trump. None of the others give a fuck. And they don't understand that without them, as the superpower in that region, we lose the strong illusion of Israel, and we lose the Suez Canal to jihadis, and the world goes into absolute turmoil. As to where, if anyone in the world wants to play fucking games at this moment in time, knowing that Biden won't do anything, that's the next move. Expect if the Iranians keep getting lippy, because you know what they did the other day, the Iranians? They launched a missile attack on the US's base compound in Iraq, and they scored a lot of direct hits. But the place is a sprawling compound, so they didn't destroy it, because it's a big old place. But they launched a missile attack against an American embassy base. What was the response from the media? What was the response from the Biden administration? Nothing, they just didn't talk about it. because it's too much for them to think about. It's too much for them to handle, that while they're showing themselves as weak, that the Iranians might try and play some games in their region. And in a matter of, well, what's strategically important in their region? How about the Persian Gulf? It's like they've got the entire Persian Gulf in rocket range. They might start playing games. If I was them, I probably would. You've seen the sanctions that they have to put up with. Wouldn't it be a great time for America to fall, right? So their threats mean nothing anymore. And the new alliance of the new Eurasian alliance come together, and the Eurasian alliance be something that looks like Russia, China, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, India, Vietnam, Korea, and there'd be nothing to stop it. Nothing. You get what was predicted by Muse back in like 2011. The United States of Eurasia. A landmass that can't be conquered, could only ever be nuked to oblivion. A trading bloc that doesn't need the rest of the world. It's like, there's something you're not fucking getting, these geopolitical things. It's like, they don't fucking need us. And we've cut them off. I warned you all about when narcissists, fantasists, enough of them, get into positions of high power. And what do? They ignore things. They're bothered about themselves and the way that they look. They're bothered about what other people think about the decisions they make. And they're very, very susceptible and vulnerable to criticism from people they like. What they would consider the core of their vote. Well, the core of their vote these days is the ever-burgeoning LGBT community and the immigrants who they frighten with talk of evil white people. They're the core of their support. And then the rich on top of that, and obviously the media pushing on their behalf. It's like, they haven't got the support. But you put narcissists in power, and the fantasists who think they know things. It's like, it's okay thinking, you can go around saying you're a car mechanic, and nobody will question it. But then one day someone will say, I need to put a new radiator on, can you come and give me a lift? And you're like, I don't know the first fucking thing about that. Well, you've just been caught wrong as a fucking bullshitting narcissist, haven't you? And that's how they go down. They pretend they know until they don't. And then they don't admit it. And then it's your problem and your fault because they've got power and they can fire you. And you've made them feel stupid. How dare you? You've made me feel stupid. Away you go. Never darken this door again. Never speak to me again. You've made me feel stupid. Well, maybe you fucking are. And I've been warning about it for years. And to make you the prediction, I'll make you the prediction I've been making for years. I've made a few Obama videos in my time. My prediction, and this might seem fanciful, but it makes sense. Have you noticed that the word Obama hasn't been mentioned in connection with any of this crisis when he's the architect of it? Nobody's said a word. Not even fucking George Galloway's saying a bad word about Obama. I've got plenty of bad words to say about Obama, but thing is with him, you're not hearing anything from him. Other than recently we heard that he'd caught COVID. I'm like, don't die, I need you. Don't die by me, I need you. It's like, why? Well, when Biden croaks and Kamala takes power and she pisses herself and can't handle anything, there is going to be a call for Obama to return as an emergency president. There'll be a call, Obama, save us. Messiah, come back and save us and make everything right. And then we'll find out that he can't. But he can't half mouth off. the perfect fall of the West would be for the rules in the States to be thrown out when Biden croaks, and then we have to appoint an interim president, and the name they'll call is for Obama. You just wait. It'll be the cringiest thing you've ever seen. It's actually, in my own sort of dreams and visions, that's in some ways how the world ends. I can't see any further than that. That's what's come to me over the years as to where they're going to bring this guy back and they're going to canonize him. The way that nobody ever mentions him, it's like he's got a completely clean slate in the eyes of many. He is everyone's imaginary friend and hero. And when they send for him, that's when we're fucked.